What are we on here? Okay, let's do it. I'm Chewy. Some of you may have been here earlier, so hello again. For those of you who haven't, I'm a developer advocate at Google, which means that I try to evangelize some of our technical products and hopefully do a good job. This is Kevin.
Hi, I'm also a developer advocate at Google, and I spend most of my time working on OpenSocial. And am I kicking off, or are you?
I think you're up first. Yep.
Yes. Okay. If you were in the earlier session, some of this is a repetition. So my apologies if you saw this already. If you weren't, then this will help set some context for the rest of the talk. The point of OpenSocial is to provide an abstraction of the web, of the social web, so that you don't have to worry about it as a developer. There are sites that specialize in managing personal information and looking after it for people. Social networking sites being the most obvious example of these. These are sites that people trust with information about themselves and their friendships. They use them to communicate with each other. They've already done the work of establishing these databases of people and getting people to put it into them. And you can tap into that without having to replicate that work. That's the point. So these are the sites we call containers. And the point of OpenSocial is that it separates the two out. You can write your own application without having to worry about the details of setting up a user database. And the containers will map these back into people for your application and link people together. The other thing is that the users have an understanding of the social contract they have with the container, of the social context that's there. They will use different sites for different things. And there's nuances to that that you really don't have to worry about too much if you're building an application. If you're building an application that's for sharing slide presentations, say, that will be used differently by people in different contexts. If they used it in a social network site like LinkedIn, they use it for business presentations. If you used it in a social network site that was focused on the family, they'd use it for slideshows of family vacations and so on. But your app could work the same way in both contexts. What would matter for the users is who they're sharing it with and how they would use it in that way. And the key point, the last point is having to register for every site you go to and tell it the same information over and over again is a major barrier to getting acceptance. And this means that someone will go to the site, try something out, they hit the registration dialog and back away from it. And if you can save the user from having to do that, as well as saving yourself from having to write the registration code, this is a big win all around. So the other thing to be aware of is there are lots of social network sites out. This is the timeline I showed earlier. Again, it's a little small to read, and it stops in 2006. But the trend is clear. There were a few sites of social networking back in '99, and there are tens of them now, and more of them keep popping up every day. Well, since we worked on OpenSocial, I keep discovering more social networking sites that I hadn't run into, that have 20 million users, that have in a different country, or have 20 million users who have a different focus that I wasn't paying attention to. You can have the same impact on those users as you can on the sites you're already familiar with, and your application can spread through those as well. Because this is the slide I showed, the XKCD slide I showed before. These different sites act as if they're different countries. People would tend to know one of them very well and live there, effectively spend their online life there. There'll be others that they visit now and then, but there are plenty of others that they don't know about at all because they haven't made themselves comfortable there. And in the same way that it broadens the mind to travel, it broadens your application's mind to travel to other social networking sites where it can meet different people and learn new things. Instead of the people having to come to your site and visit your little private island, the application gets to go out and tour all these other social networking countries out there, because that's where their friends are.
Sorry, yeah, it's really slow. I
Okay.
apologize.
So this is the point I made earlier, is that the social networking sites in general don't set themselves up with a particular set of users in mind. They set themselves up for people to socialize in, and then they diverge themselves. What happens is somebody will find a site, they'll tell their friends, and it'll spread out that way. And then a successful site will watch the users and feedback and grow. But then those social network sites bump into the pre-existing cultural boundaries, the pre-existing linguistic boundaries, and they find it harder to find users across borders or across a language barrier, but also across a cultural barrier. There's a great research paper by Dana Boyd that discusses the difference between MySpace users and Facebook users in the US, because the Facebook users started out as a university site, and so everyone there has spread through the group of people who are university educated, whereas MySpace started out as a general site for teenagers, and so they have a very different user base, but they also have a very different class structure, and so you'll notice that the Facebook users will dismiss MySpace as ugly and messy, and MySpace users will dismiss Facebook as snooty and not interesting to them, and you get these sort of separation of things because people like to associate with people that are like themselves. So because the sites grow in this way, there are probably large numbers of them out there that you haven't bumped into because you fit into certain groups. You're well educated, you're Czech speaking, and so on. So that there's a set of groups that you're members of. So if you'll see the sites that fit that, you won't necessarily have seen these other sites that could be potentially a large market for your application. And one of the great things about OpenSocial is that your application can reach out to audiences that you weren't expecting in the same way. So just as in the same way as your applications, their minds get broadened by travel, you also need to think about making sure that your application is designed to be localized, that you can separate different languages out and make it work that way. And the other thing is to once you find a user base in a country, make sure you create a feedback loop with them and a support with them. Find bridge personalities who can translate for you. But also find bridge personalities to the different social networking sites. Find someone who knows that social networking site well and can explain to you if your app is behaving in a way that site would make sense, or if not, how you could change it to spread more. There are some subtleties like that. Often the app will, different apps will naturally take on the characteristics of the network, because the overwhelming characteristic is the people who are in it. And just by seeing their friends in it, the app will feel like part of the network. But there can be other nuances as to how the different sites behave and how they send messages and so on.
Has it crashed? Excellent. Did that do something?
That's it. Oh, the arrow means it. And the other point I made in more detail before was OpenSocial isn't just for social network sites. There are lots of sites that have large collections of users and information about them and information about their relationships. As well as social network sites, there are personal dashboard sites. Examples of that would be iGoogle and MyYahoo, where people's front page for the web. In both those cases, you can put your applications there as well, if you use the OpenSocial gadget model. There are sites that are based around social objects. So this is the idea of a site that is focused around a particular thing that people are sharing, whether it's an event, whether it's photographs, whether it's movies. The site has a set of these social objects that people use as hubs to connect to each other. And OpenSocial has a way of mapping into that model as well. Corporate CRM systems. These are also large stores of relationship data, and there is a mapping between OpenSocial and those, so you can build an application that runs in those environments as well. And the final, any website, seems to be ridiculously over-inclusive, but what we mean by that is that any site can become a social site, and we have tools that will make it easier for them to do that. And the particular one there is Google Friend Connect, which lets you add JavaScript to your site just as you would add Google Maps to your site through JavaScript, and it gives you a login page and the ability to model friend relationships directly on the site and to embed gadgets within the site that use those relationships. It also bridges out to external social networks and will reuse those friend connections rather than requiring people to create them over again. So that creates a nice feedback loop where people using your site will be sending activities into the remote social network sites. Their friends will see them there and bring them back to your website to visit as well. So there is a way to bridge from your site into these social sites that already exist and back again. And both halves get benefit from that. The app developer who's built their own website gets the benefit of the flow of events from the social network side, and the social network site gets the benefit of the activities happening outside its site being part of it as well, and drawing people back to it too.
I guess that's me.
Is this you?
Yeah. Sorry?
That's fine.
Yeah, no, so this is currently, I grabbed this morning, a list of all the websites which support OpenSocial that we know about. There could be, as Kevin said, a few more out there that have kind of sprung up and done it without even our knowledge. And in fact, I think if I manage to get the animation in, yep, Cesnam this morning announced support for OpenSocial as well. So that's a whole, excuse me, another bunch of users online. Using this when I've got this. So now I can do it without. There is huge opportunity out there. There's over 375, I think Nelson said 390 million, so that must be our new stat. 390 million users using OpenSocial or available through OpenSocial right now. So you build an application, it may not be a killer app for all 390 million, but even a small percentage of those is going to have some good traction. How can you capitalize on that? Well, we've put together some ideas, some of them not so serious as others, but hopefully that will get you thinking about building social applications. There's a little bit of code in here towards the end, but mostly it's just high level. I think there are still a lot of people out there who are building the wrong kind of app, and we really need to work to change that and make apps that engage the user. Here's my favorite example of an app that doesn't work. I know we're supposed to not give negative examples, but I mean, it's one of those apps that people will install the first time and then probably not come back to. It's one step further from throwing sheep at your friends, it's throwing crap at your friends. Yes, it really does say a fun game where you can crap on your friends. Now just don't scrap them, crap them. It's got a lot of installs, so people are obviously enjoying doing this, but it hasn't got much longevity. People probably won't be engaging with it for that long. So we've come up with some more examples, which we'll be going through now. Build something that's going to be useful to users, I guess. We'll come back to this point in a lot more detail in the future, but this is really nice. This is my Orkut page, and now I can access Facebook through Orkut using the iPhone interface in like a little widget size. It's kind of neat. It lets me look at two social networks from one point. It solves a real need. Not all the best practices are necessarily going to be hugely helpful, but hopefully some of them we'll see will be beneficial. And just to give you an idea of the effect that OpenSocial can have, Plaxo announced OpenSocial support way back when, and off the back of that generated 500% more connections, because people were excited about the fact that it was no longer just a kind of shared address book. It was actually going to have some meaningful functionality. So what's the first thing? Engage quickly. Make sure that users can understand exactly what it is. Oops, sorry, Kevin. Make sure it is that users can understand exactly what it is they're going to be getting when they come. We've all seen screens like this. No one really likes them, especially if they last for ages. It doesn't matter how pretty they are. I lost 1.5 years of my life to Warcraft, but I still never enjoyed seeing this screen. You just want to get in the game. So focus on the 30-second experience. Give stuff to people the moment that they install the app. Let them engage, let them understand what they're going to be getting. I think you can guess the slide that's coming next. This, you see it, you know what's happening. It's not necessarily the best app in the world, but it's pretty obvious what you're going to be able to do when you install it. Show value and identity, so make the core purpose of your application absolutely clear from the get-go. Once again, and I think this is the last time this comes up, don't worry, I do have some different examples, but again, you kind of know, you see this, you know what you're going to be able to do. This one too, skiers versus snowboarders. How many people snowboard? Yeah, how many people ski? Boo. But that's the point. Skiers and snowboarders love to hate each other. So this application has an immediate effect. You get to join the army and kind of tell your friends, I'm a snowboarder, well, I hate the skiers. I can tell I'm in the minority in this room, so I might change to skiing for the purposes of this demonstration. Populate the application with fun content. Make sure that there's cool stuff in there that's going to engage. This is a graffiti application that I installed on High Five, and believe it or not, I built this in under 5 minutes. It's amazing. A little sun and some dolphins and penguins and ducks. I didn't even draw them, they're just clip art that you kind of put in. But I'm really proud of this. It's beautiful, and I can share it with my friends. But the point is, it's letting me create stuff, no matter how silly it is. And that's where the kicker is. And again, skiers versus snowboarders, this isn't the best app, because actually it uses a pretty nasty way of encouraging extra users. But the concept behind it, the fact that you're immediately able to engage and you're able to see what your friends are doing in it, that's what's powerful about it. This one, Jeannie, the girl on the left, she used to work at Google. Thankfully she doesn't now, so she'll never see this, because otherwise she'll kill me. This is her, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's just, every time we see it, we laugh and laugh and laugh. And you'll see down here, she said, well, you may maybe not see it at the back. Take this off right now, you're such an arse. So she's seen that her friends put it up there, and she wants it gone. But the point is, all of her friends got a real kick out of it. And it does engage quickly, because you see it, you have fun. And so even something as simple as uploading pictures can have really, really strong value and can get people to engage quickly. Make it easy for the user to add content. Don't put barriers to entry and don't make them jump through hoops to get stuff up. Make it easy for them to edit settings and change their preferences. This is a gadget from Expedia. It's not actually social, but it's a great example of how to add settings options in. The idea is it's a calendar. Unfortunately, it only works for America, but it's a nice example of this. You say your source airport, your destination airport, and the month you'd like to travel in. The idea is, I guess, you live in New York, you've got a friend who lives in LA, you want to visit them in November, you don't necessarily care when. You can specify this information, you hit save, and then it will render yellow boxes around the cheapest dates. And you put this on your iGoogle page. And every time you come back, every time you reload the page, it does a real-time search, and you're able to see, rather than having to go to Expedia or other travel sites every day and search again and again and again in different days, you've just got a snapshot view. And it's really kind of giving you that information, allowing you to specify your needs and delivering useful information. Daily horoscopes, another good example. You obviously have to specify some settings before you can get started. At a minimum, your star sign, but more preferably, I guess, your birthday, so that the gadget can also say happy birthday when it's your birthday. Just little simple things like that. The next thing, make it easy. Help users get to the information they want. Help them deliver or direct content quickly. This is a Facebook app which allows you to plot where you've been on a map. Really simple, really fun, nice to show to your friends all the places in the world that you've been. The cool thing about it is, the minute you start typing, it's starting to make suggestions. And it means that I don't necessarily know whether or not I have to type Prague or Praha or what. I can start typing and just click, and it's actually giving me suggestions for the information I need. So that's going to be really useful too. You're not making the user work too hard to get this stuff. Mimic look and feel. Now, we've got a lot of different containers across OpenSocial, and each of them have a slightly different look and feel. Well, I say slightly, lots of them are wildly different. What can you do to take advantage of that? This is probably one of the better examples, Super Poke. For each place that this is available, they just move this arrow up and down to be in line with the Add to My Profile button on the network. Really, really simple, but this arrow actually animates. And so you can see where you're supposed to click. It's just drawn your eye. If they did a generic version of this, it wouldn't necessarily work. But by drawing your eye to the right place to click per network, it becomes a powerful way to engage the user. This is my High Five page. Yeah. It's pretty sweet. If you go and visit it, it animates and everything. It's actually really ugly, and I deliberately made it as ugly as I could. But the point is, you can make things really, really ugly. And you need to be aware that people will make things ugly, what they think looks nice. And you need to be able to allow your app to customize or to kind of get that look and feel. With a graffiti app, it can be as simple as just offering a few different skins. You know, you've got a white one, a black one, and a pink one. One of those is probably going to be useful to the user, unless they've gone for some really shocking array of colors. Or it might be actually completely mimicking the look and feel of the website it's embedded on. How many of you know Facebook? Probably a few. Okay, well, it's a social network that's kind of big. This is Catbook, which is an app you can install in Facebook, and it lets you create a social network for your cat. What could be better? The point is, it looks almost exactly like Facebook in terms of layout, in terms of buttons, in terms of functionality. So a user who's comfortable with Facebook is going to install this, and they're going to get how it works. They're not going to have a complicated learning experience. They're going to intuitively understand it. What happens if you want your app to stand out from the crowd? You don't necessarily want it to blend in with the network. You want to have its own look and feel. I looked long and hard for some apps that did that well, but I didn't find any. Here's an example of one that does it badly instead. Billiards, it's just blue and kind of ugly, and it doesn't really fit nicely in any social network. But the point is, it's entirely possible that you do have a brand that does work well and does deserve to stand on its own. You don't have to follow the look and feel of the network. You might want something that really stands out, and that's fine. So work on that and make it fit. At least don't make the colors clash too badly with the network, but don't worry about, if it's important to you, making your brand the key part of that message. Self-expression. Now, your homepage is this. As I've said, sorry, I thought there was another slide. As I said, people can customize their homepages. They can adjust their profiles. It may be complicated, like changing the color and the look and feel, or it may just be adding different bits of information about themselves. The point is, users do want to do this, so allow them to. Allow them to get that information out there, and allow them to browse information that their friends have done. The reason that I go to social networks is partly so I can spy on what my friends have been up to. And so browsing your friends' activity feeds can be a really, really interesting activity. But allow them to take that and allow them to expose that information that they're doing in their feeds, in the activity streams. Kevin's going to talk about this a bit more later, so I'm not going to dwell too long on it. But just having your application write to your activity stream, and then exposing that information to friends can be a great way to get information about what the application is doing and put it out there. I've realized, sorry, I should have said at the beginning, I've started to speak very quickly. It's my worst habit. If I'm going too fast for anyone, just wave your hand or throw something at me and I will slow down, okay? So, anyway, back to the point. Enable self-expression. So from the perspective of viewers, people looking at your profile page, it's a place for them to learn information about you. And most networks will allow you to embed applications directly on the profile page. So allow those applications to really speak and express information. And again, most networks will have this view as another person button so that you can actually see what your profile looks like to others and not just as yourself. Use that and remember that it exists. Now, common interests. We've touched on this snowboarder example already. I like snowboarding. Some of you happen to like skiing. I don't know why. But this is one of those things that does tap into what people enjoy. And me being able to put this stamp on my homepage is actually quite a powerful thing. It's not just that, though. I've got communities that I join on Orchid. I like Cheeses of the World, Marmite, Xbox. I like goats. I don't know why. I just find them funny. They eat cigarette butts and shoes. Who wouldn't? But it's this idea that I've kind of gone out there. I've taken time to subscribe to these communities. So applications should be kind of sniffing this information too. An application can get access to things like my communities and my interests and things that I like. So why not look at those and see if they're relevant? Going back to the example about snowboarding, why would a snowboard app want to kind of push itself to people who haven't even said they like snowboarding or skiing? You would only really want to kind of push that information out if you have. Allow conversation around particular products. This is Buddy Poke. It really does enable that self-expression. This is me tackling Chris. I work really hard to make my buddy look like me, look down to the red shoes. This is supposed to be Chris. He hasn't got blue hair. I've seen him this morning. But anyway, I still got to tackle him. It was quite fun. Music. This is a really simple one too. Musical tastes are something that are really important to people. So leverage that sort of information too. People are passionate about their music, so take advantage of that type of content. Make it dynamic. No one likes an app that doesn't change. It's got to be content that will stimulate users and cause them to come back. Again, the snowboarding one, you can see who I was recruited by. You can see other people I've recruited. Again, this isn't the best way necessarily to run an app, but the fact that the information is updating over time can be a really powerful thing, and you can see your team grow. And you'll see here, once I'd sent my first invitation off to Ritz, who I know is a snowboarder, it starts to put in who my army's made up of, and we can really start to see this community grow. I'm having to walk backwards and forwards a lot. Also, allow the social graph to drive this information too. Pictures are one of the simplest examples of this. Pictures are technically an application on Facebook. But what it's allowing you to do is share this huge amount of information that's out there. People take pictures all the time. They want to post them. They want to tag them. They want to leave comments. And that can be a really, really powerful way for people to communicate and people to engage. Maybe you're going to make an app that's a subset of pictures that's just called embarrassing pictures. That would be a really fun thing to do too, so that you can just share embarrassing pictures amongst your friends. I beat Chris at typing. I was really happy when I did this. Allow yourself to have high score charts on your apps. Make ad hoc leagues out of challenges and games. There's a fantasy football game that a newspaper has in London, and they're talking about making this fantasy football game just generate an ad hoc league so you can see every week who's doing best amongst your friends. And then you can have the official league that you're a member of. But this, this idea of having dynamic information, pulling it in from the friends around you, and then using that to create additional information that will help engagement can be very, very powerful too. Again, the music thing. You know, people change their music tastes, they update their favorite playlists all the time. Reflect that in the app. Let them update that information. It doesn't just have to be the social graph. Horoscopes, they change every day, hopefully, if it's a good horoscope app. So make sure that the information in your app is being updated as often as it needs to be. Big Brother, Albania, one of my favorite news feeds. You can install this on your social network too. It's not really my favorite news feed, I have to say. But the point is the information's out there, and they're feeding multiple pieces of news every day. So for people who are avidly tracking this, it's going to be useful for them. In both cases, the day-to-day changes, whether or not they're being generated by your friends or by the person who's actually built the app, you, it's going to keep people coming back, and it's going to keep people excited with the content that's there. So, friend activity. We've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but a really easy way to expose this information is to expose friend activity. This is supported inherently in OpenSocial with the activity class. You can write to activity streams, leave information about what you've been up to, or what your friends have been up to in different feeds, and then subscribe to those. It can be either on the profile page, or it can be application specific. So notifications here. Within the skiing app, you can see that Ritz has joined my army. Or you could see that, you could post it directly to my profile page, show that Ritz has installed it, he's joined my army there. Whatever you think works best for your application. For some applications, actually putting this information inside the app and not on the activity page is better. For others, you want to broadcast it. And again, Kevin's going to touch on the different benefits here. The point is the friend activity is very powerful. This is MotoGP for the Xbox. How many people have played Xbox Live? Is it big over here? A few. Okay, so the idea of Xbox Live is you've got this video game in your house and you connect it to the internet and you just put on a headset, and then from your sofa you're playing online with all these different people. It's really powerful. I got this, I have a friend who works at Microsoft and he got me onto the beta program. I was lucky enough to play this a few days before it came out. And when it did come out, I was number 7 on one of the tracks, and I was so happy. I'd worked so hard, and I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and I was down at like 3004. And I called into work and said, I'm sick, and I can't come in, and spent all day trying to beat it, and only got back up to about 2000. But the point is, it was this social element. It was the fact that I could see other people were beating me. That drove me back and wanted me to keep coming for more. I mean, World of Warcraft, another great example. It's, the fact that you're there clicking on rabbits that you've got to kill 20 times, isn't that entertaining? The fact that you're doing it with 6 other friends and having a laugh, that's when it becomes really, really fun. Use the friends, that's the key. Browse the graph. Exposing the activity to friends is one method among many. So, showing a picture of Jeannie to all of you, that's one way to have a great application. But people often just want to browse. They don't want to have to install an application. Facebook have done this really well. Much as I hate to say it, they really, really have. This stuff preloads. When you click on one of these headings, it just, it just switches out. It's showing another div. It's not having to pull information, you're not waiting. It's just there. So delivering this information quickly and allowing people to absorb it at their own speed can be really powerful too. Letting you see who's visited your profile. This is my high 5 profile. As you can tell, I'm very popular. I've had no visits this week, none 2 weeks ago, none 3 weeks ago, but I got one last week. And it's from someone I don't even know. But maybe it is. Maybe it's someone I went to school with and they've changed their name. I don't know. But the point is, without this ability here, I wouldn't have known this. So make this information available for people to browse, should they want to. Friends of friends, too. It's not necessarily just going to be your friends who have useful information. Going back to this map app, this is my friend Ilva's map. She's been to a lot of places. She's a big traveler. She loves it. But it actually also shows her friends' friends with maps. And what would be really nice is the next stage forward. Let's say I was coming to Prague, I'd never been here before. Why doesn't it look at my friends, see which one of those have been to Prague, but also my friends' friends and see them? And then maybe it just gives me a way to send a message out to all those people and say, can you give me any recommendations for a nice place to drink or a nice place to eat? And again, this is supported inherently in OpenSocial with something called network distance. And so you're able to query a friend, or a friend's friend, or a friend's friend's friend, or a friend's friend's friend, depending on how far the container will let you kick it to death to work out these complex connections. You can definitely query beyond your immediate set of friends. And that can be surprisingly powerful, and something that a lot of people really aren't doing at the moment. Kevin, I think we're back to you. Sorry.
So there's a phrase that people use a lot with social networks. They talk about going viral, or they talk about being viral. And it's used so much, people have forgot what it actually means. What it actually means to be viral is to hijack an organism for your own benefit, and damage the organism in the process. So I've got a sort of personal quest to stop people using the word viral in this way, and step back and rethink the cliche. So instead, think about other metaphors from biology. There are different kinds of reproductive strategies. If you study biology, there's R strategies and K strategies. The R strategy is you have lots and lots of seeds, or have lots of offspring, and hope that some of them will survive. So the dandelion is the example of that, but it's true for codfish and things like that as well. They have lots of eggs, lots of seeds. They spread them out there in the world and hope some of them get somewhere. Whereas the other alternative strategy is a K strategy. This is you have a few offspring and you really look after them and take care of them. So mammals are examples of K strategists. They don't have hundreds of offspring. They'll have a few, and they'll look after them and nurture them and feed them. Another strategy that's used for reproduction is fruiting. What you do there is that you wrap the seed in something delicious so that people want to eat it, and then they'll discard the seed somewhere else. You spread the seed by giving them something directly there. So another metaphor to think about there. And the last one here is stolonic, which is the technical term for things that grow from the roots. There's also rhizomatic, but that's slightly different, and a lot of people use that, but that means there's a single root, whereas stolonic means the root system is very distributed. So strawberries are an example of this. Mushrooms do this as well. They send out little runners all over the place, and those sprout into new plants somewhere else. So the metaphor that I think this fits with is the activity streams. You're sending out these little roots in all directions, and some of them sprout into new plants, new installs of the application. So here's a bunch of strategies that applications use to spread themselves, which I've mapped back into these metaphors. The forced invite model, where the app says you can't use this until you invite 5 friends, that's viral in the the offensive sense of the word. And in fact, that model has now been banned by many of the social networks. They will actually kick you off the site for doing that because it's so annoying to the users. Creating incentives to invite, like one of your examples was showing that. I think the skiing one is saying, oh, if you invite people, you get more points to play in the game. That's an R strategy. It's sending lots of seeds. It's not always a good idea. Again, it tends to annoy people. It also distorts the application. You get a bunch of users who are playing it for that reason, not for the reason that they should be, and they will annoy the other users and drive them away. So you end up just with the people who get hooked on sending out, counting the score and keeping track that way, and you won't get that will displace the people who actually care about snowboarding. The install after using idea. This is quite. So if you've looked at the Facebook redesign, they've adopted this quite strongly now. What happens there is when you go to an application for the first time, you don't have to install it. You can use it a little bit first, and it'll have a little bit of information about you. And then if you say, yeah, I want this myself, then it does the install, and it gets more permission to get information there. So this is like making the application browse, but you want it to make sense to the users before the install as well. When they see it on other people's pages too, they can still interact with it and still find it useful without necessarily installing it themselves. So this is sort of a K strategy of nurturing the users, giving them something there to work with. Now the one-to-one spreading of applications where people tell each other about it, that's a K strategy. You make it easy for them to spread the application, but you don't force them to do it. You encourage them to do it because their friends will like it, and that sort of gives you possibly a slower growth path, but a more natural and more organic way of growing, because people are actually recommending your application for its own reasons, not because they're being forced to. And people are smart, and they'll work this out. An invitation with meaning is a great way of doing this. So if you're sending out, if you're inviting somebody else to install the application, that's one thing. if you're inviting them to install the application by sending them a photograph of their friend, which the application has helped them produce, or a nice bit of artwork like Chewy did earlier, that's much more attractive. That's like the fruiting model. There's something going out with the seed that makes them want to eat it, and then they're happier to spread the seed. And then the rhizomatic stolonic idea of activity streams is really powerful. The activity streams are sending out these little seeds in all directions, little runners that can sprout back into the application, because there's a little thing out there that is a bit of event, a bit of social contact flowing to the person's friends, and with a link straight back to your application. So that's a powerful way of sending out runners that can then sprout into new applications. It's a fairly long quote. I'll read it out. Why not? Television is not vulgar and prurient and dumb because the people who compose the audience are vulgar and dumb. Television is the way it is simply because people tend to be extremely similar in their vulgar and prurient and dumb interests, and wildly different in their refined and aesthetic and noble interests. So my summary of that is being dumb gets low CPMs. You're not going to... although you may target a lot of people with a stupid application, you're not going to get much attention out of it, you're not going to get much advertising revenue, you're not going to get something back. Whereas if you create something that appeals to somebody's aesthetic and noble and refined interest, something they actually really care about, they will engage with the application much more closely. Now, classically, this has been a problem because the problem is, how do I find those people? And the wonderful thing about social networking sites is they will find each other for you. You can send your app out into the social networking world, and it will work its way through finding the people who care about that specific thing, and they will tell each other and they will spread it because it is so easy to do. And they will spread through all the means I've said previously. So what this is saying is, don't pick the sort of biggest, stupidest thing to do. Think of something that people will really care about, and then use the social network to help them discover it. So this is some examples that Andrew Chen put together, where he contrasts the kind of application that does these aggressive, viral, spammy ways of getting people to invite it. And what you see is you get this initial spike of active users, and then people figure it out and they stop using it, and the active users drops back to zero. You always tend to hit a saturation point, and at that point you can't grow any further. And that people have realised that your app is actually really annoying. They've stopped using it. They've started uninstalling it, and you end up with fewer users than you had before. Because if you behave like a disease, people develop an immune system. People are wise. In the early days of the Facebook platform, you were able to build these gigantically spammy applications because it was new to them, and that people would spread it out. They're wise to that now. They're not going to fall for that anymore. Also, the sites are wise to it too. The social network sites are trying to avoid the applications that are primarily there for their own ends and not there to help the users. And they'll start blocking them, or they'll respond to complaints of people, and they'll stop being there. So stop behaving like a disease. Instead, think about organic growth. So you can start with, if you focus on the retention rate and being sure that your users keep coming back to the application, even if you have a slower initial curve, you have some benefit there. So at some point you'll hit a saturation point within a particular social network, and you'll have a bit of attrition, but you won't lose all your users. You won't have that sort of flash in the pan curve we saw before. And of course, the other thing to think about with OpenSocial is that once you've saturated one social network, there are plenty more for you to go out and send it into to try out as well. So to sum up, you want to be organic, not viral. Nurture your users, send out invitations with gifts in, and care about retaining them. Don't be infectious and epidemic. Don't send brute force invites that chase the number of installs. Focus instead on the user experience, and the installs will follow.
Cool, thanks, Kevin. Yep, don't need it. I was about to pick it up again. So, build communities. Containers' entire social graph is huge, and sometimes users' social graphs will be huge too. This is a friend of mine, Alexis. This is 3 weeks old, and she's now up to over 500 friends. You can't possibly make something that's going to appeal to all of those. And in fact, I don't actually think they're really all her friends. But that's not the point. Social networks aren't designed to be just about your friends. They're about people you want to keep in contact with. But you can grow smaller communities. A lot of this information, we saw it before, is exposed on the network page or through the API. You can pull their groups. You can pull their preferences. You can pull their interests. And you can start to learn about applications which are going to be interesting to them. Again, going back to the snowboard example, snowboard versus skiers, that's actually not a brilliant app in terms of the way it spreads, because it does ask you just to send out invites all the time. What would be better is if it looked at my network of friends, identified which one of those, which ones of those were interested in the same thing, and then said, hey, these friends might like that because they've got similar interests. There are three main ways you can think about building smaller communities. You've got grouped relationships, so maybe people grew up together, they were at school together, university, they've worked together somewhere. That's a really obvious one. Shared interests, all your friends who also like cheese or goats, and shared interests amongst the entire social graph. So that's where the idea of these kind of container communities come in. So whether or not my friends like goats, I can go and find like-minded people and I can share those with. But don't forget, people are putting this information right there on their profiles. So you can get access to it, you can learn about it, and you can understand what people's interests are. The next big thing, I touched on this earlier, and this is probably one of the most important parts of the whole pie. Solve real-world tasks. Throwing crap at people, throwing sheep at people, poking them, leaving messages, even buddy poke and stuff. It's fun, but it's not doing a lot beyond kind of expressing your kind of interests, or it's not even expressing your interests, it's just kind of a way of wasting time. You're hanging out with people, you're sending them, hi, I'm here. But beyond that, it's not doing a lot of useful things. How many people have heard of Couchsurfing? 1, 2. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what it is, the idea is you can you can sign up to this Couchsurfing site at couchsurfing.com. And when you go to a foreign city, you don't have to worry about a hotel. You can, people will make offers of sofas, couches that you can sleep on. And you don't have to let the person in. If they turn up at your door with an axe, you can turn them away. No one's going to be surprised if you do. But the idea is it's like-minded people who just want to make new friends and realize that actually most people are pretty normal and it's okay to let someone sleep on their sofa overnight if they can't necessarily afford a hotel room. This is the perfect thing. It just makes absolute sense for it to be deployed on a social network, because suddenly instead of complete strangers, you at least can hope that they're 3 or 4 hops removed from your friends, and therefore not psycho axe murderers, maybe. There's still no guarantee, but you're kind of hoping that it's a step in the right direction. Another example is this Amazon one. This isn't social, but it's a nice example of how it solves both a user need and gives Amazon a huge amount of information. This application for iGoogle, you can search or browse any content on Amazon. You can look for DVDs, you can look for books, consumer electronics. But the key here is you can click on this compare prices button and you'll go to a page. I don't know if this is going to, yeah, there we go. You can go to a page which then has, or not even a page, like a tab in the gadget, which has the prices of this item at lots of different stores. And you'll notice Amazon aren't at the top. And in fact, they're rarely at the top for a lot of their items. But what they do gain by this is understanding what people are searching for. Because it's an iGoogle gadget, most people will go to their Google homepage and search in the Google box, and then price comparison, Top Gear, the challenges, and then come to a price comparison site and look through and eventually click and potentially buy. This way, Amazon are intercepting that search. They're learning a lot about what users are searching for, and the user's also getting something much more interesting because they're not having to perform so many clicks to get to the information they're looking for. So it's kind of a win-win situation. It really does solve this issue that people have, or gives you issues that you might have. Same with the travel gadget that we saw earlier. You're not having to go to a travel site and search every day. You're actually just able to install that gadget and get the latest recommendations or get the cheapest prices. Friend Connect, which Kevin touched on a little bit earlier, solves this in another way. Amazon doesn't implement Friend Connect, but it's a nice example of when it might be useful. This is actually off an example site, but the point is when you get to a review of an item on a web page and there are 1,500 ratings, 1,300 ratings with a 4-star average, that probably doesn't mean all that much to you. 1,400 people that you've never met before, how many of them are right, how many of them even share your interests? Friend Connect allows you to connect your social networks and your social graph to applications embedded on a non-social site, like Amazon. So I could simply tick this box, and it would restrict the information to people directly in my social graph, and display just that information, giving me hopefully a more rounded view. Assuming I'm not like Alexis and I've got 422 friends with wildly different views. But you can see how it can become more beneficial. Now, this is another one, cater to the lowest common denominator. This is, I'd forgotten this from school. This is the formula for working out the lowest common denominator. I'm not going to make you sit there and work it out, don't worry. But in this room, we're all power users. Like it or not, we really, really are. We're advanced users of the internet. That's why we're here. Some of us more advanced than others, but I've been there, and I think my girlfriend's been the one in the middle with the nervous laugh too. But most of the web are actually more like this. You know, they're frustrated by technology. They don't like waiting. The whole thing can be a pain. Alternatively, they've got equipment that's kind of out of date or doesn't really work as well as it should. And in fact, even at Google, this was one of our first servers with Lego casing. You know, the technology isn't always as great as the idea. These are some benchmarks from Chrome that you may have seen from earlier. Chrome is supposed to, be so much faster at JavaScript. This shows, again, Chrome, a little bit faster than Firefox 3. TraceMonkey is said to be faster than Chrome, who knows? But fundamentally, the goal, if you want to learn more about Chrome benchmarks, search Google for Chrome benchmarks. There's hundreds. I'll speak to Ness at the back, who worked on V8, and can tell you a lot more. The point is, there's one thing that comes out again and again and again and again and again, and that's IE. It's slow. We don't want, at Google, we don't like to, say, oh, these guys are bad, these guys are good. But you cannot deny that Internet Explorer has got a slightly slower JavaScript engine than most of the other browsers. It's just not quite as fast. The problem is, it's popular. It's used a lot, as we'll see. So a real success for Chrome would just be making IE9 faster, so that the internet as a whole was faster for everyone, and that people were able to consume stuff a lot more quickly. By some accounts, Chrome has already got 2% market share. On W3 Schools, which is a slightly more tech site, 3%. It doesn't matter. You go to, this is off the Facebook forums. And the key thing here, Internet Explorer, 73%. Another Facebook forum, Internet Explorer, 67%. Maybe you can see down at the bottom, PlayStation 3, 0.01%. And by all accounts, PlayStation 3 needs a better browser too. It's not got a very good JavaScript engine, I'm sure. On Orkut, these are stats that we released. Over half the users to Orkut use Internet Explorer 6. That's technology from 2001. It's 7 years old, and over half the internet's using it. I can't underline how much. I mean, how many people here use Internet Explorer 6? I don't. Okay, 3 or 4. no, 6. Internet Explorer 6. It's 8 years old.
How many people
use it?
Use it.
Oh yeah, no. No. Use. No. Everyone loves it, right? I'd never say that. But that's the point. So many people are still using this. Not us, generally, but our parents and our friends who maybe aren't as tech savvy. They're not getting, they've got this slow experience. So test your applications in Internet Explorer 6, Internet Explorer 7, Firefox, Chrome, Opera, PlayStation, if you've got one. Have a look and see what this stuff looks like, and make sure it works just as well for everyone. That's absolutely key. Now, I know this is a developer conference, so hey, wait, what about code? There's some stuff I can show you. So, woo, code. One of the most important things, check for errors when you're building applications. No one likes an application that just crashes without reason. It's really easy to check for errors. If data had error, or if data didn't have error, if not data had error, then do some good stuff. Otherwise, fail, kindly. Show why it failed. Explain the reasons properly. Discover which fields are supported. Not every social container, or not every container, social network supports the same fields. So find out whether or not they do, and adjust your application accordingly. Or just don't let it to be installed if it doesn't support certain fields. This returns a Boolean, and it will return false if any field fails. So you might want to have multiple calls to find out which fields are supported. But the point is, don't make assumptions about what information you're going to be getting back. Use the container's cache. This could be for a couple of reasons. One, it can help performance in terms of DNS lookups. If you're pulling information from lots of different sources and the user's never seen some of these domain names before, they're going to be waiting a few seconds for these resolutions. So by using the container's cache, they'll be served from the container locally. The other big advantage is if you're serving them from your own website, it will reduce the hits and the load on your website. Especially for things like images, where you don't necessarily need to track the number of images that are being pulled, and you can actually save a lot of bandwidth by letting the container do the work. There are some other things you can do too, and these are detailed on the page, on the best practices page on the code.google.com website, so I'm not going to sit here and read all the way through these, but it's things like if modified since, only pulling information if it's actually changed, using gzip to reduce the amount of data that's being passed. These are all pretty standard tips and tricks that most people will use in everyday web development, but aren't yet thinking about for application development, and it's sometimes part of the reason why applications run so slowly. And using server-side optimizations can improve the Internet Explorer experience. Finally, test and measure everything. You've built a gadget, it's doing okay, maybe it's making some money, it's got some users. What can you do to make sure it's going to do better? You can always change it. Whatever you do to your application, it's never as good as it can be. You guys hopefully all know the Google homepage, and you know a little bit about the algorithm and how we rank pages. Last year we made several changes, and in fact several changes every week. I think the official number was 220 changes over the course of the year, both to the back and front end of the Google search results page. That's a lot, obviously, and we're always testing. And it's the only way to stay ahead of the game. And we'll run those tests to small percentages of users, see how they react according to the rest of them, and then if it's a general improvement for the users who experience it, we'll deploy that change to the rest of the world. It's not just search we're doing it on, though. This is Picasa. How many people know Picasa? A few. Okay, it's Google's image manipulation upload program. This, at one point, was the Picasa home download page. And you can see it's got free download, get Google Pack, it's got some links on there. There's something called the website optimizer that lets you nominate elements on the page and set them up for different types of copy. So we said we want 1, 2, 3, 4 places that we want to try different images and copy, and we'll test different images and copy in each different place and see what happens. So the final design was this one, which is still the same basic framework. It's just obviously slightly different to the one you saw before. The important thing to note here is that the winning combination was the best of over 200 versions that we tested, and it drove 30% more downloads. 30% is not insignificant. I don't care if you only had 10 downloads before, an extra 3 when you've only got 10 is impressive. 30% uplift is never a bad thing. So you never finish testing. You know what we did when we finished testing that page? Started testing again with a whole bunch of new variations. And that's still running. We fundamentally believe that you can never test enough and that there's always room for improvement. And you should remember that too. You can learn more about this at code.google.com. And in fact, there's an OpenSocial website at, let me just pull it up very quickly, sites.google.com/site/OpenSocial Code Lab. And if you want to learn how to write an OpenSocial application, see I've put the URL in big letters so you can read it there. If you want to learn more about how to write an OpenSocial application, it's got 3 very simple steps, and you've got instructions on how to sign up for most of our partners here. You can click on that, it'll tell you how to get a developer account, and it'll talk you through the basic instructions and the basic guidelines. We've also got here tips on how to help debugging, and the examples that I touched on earlier showing how to test for errors and find out whether or not different fields are supported, and other tips and tricks. And if you have ideas, my email address is there. Please send them along. We're happy to add them to the site. But if you want to learn more, that's where you can do it. I think that's the end of our presentation, and we've got about 4.5 minutes for questions. So if there are any, we'd be happy to answer them. Hi.
There is a microblogging service, Jaiku, which was acquired by Google, and there is still that invitational type of registration. Are you planning to put it down for everybody can register?
So they recently changed Jaiku so that it has unlimited invitations,
Yeah.
and eventually they want to open it up to open registration. Yeah, they're planning to do that at some point. They're still in the process of transitioning onto Google infrastructure and moving it onto App Engine. So that's part of what's going on with Jaiku at the moment. Once that's done, they expect to open it up more broadly.
Much like Gmail, I guess. We just want to make sure it's not going to grow out of control or fall over.
One of the problems with Google taking something over is that you get a big spike in interest, and then it's like, oh, well, now we need to put it on Google infrastructure at the same time as trying to cope with the spike on the old infrastructure. That's not good. So that can be one of the reasons things slow down a bit after acquisition.
Any other questions? Perfect. We finished 2 minutes early. Thank you very much.